When you hear the word fascism, you probably think of 1930s Europe. Dictators, secret police, total control, and most Americans hear that word and say, that could never happen here. But history doesn't repeat itself with the same costume. It adapts. It wears new language, new technology, new media. Today I want to talk to you honestly, not as a lecture, not as a propaganda, but as a serious conversation about whether the United States, especially since Donald Trump entered power, has begun showing documented warning signs of democratic erosion and authoritarian drift. This isn't speculations. We will walk through real events, real data, real reports from international watchdogs, and then you can decide for yourself whether these claims are true or false. What fascism actually looks like in real life. Fascism doesn't arrive at all at once. It builds through pattern. A leader presented as the national only savior, attacks on independent institutions, discrediting elections, undermining the press, encouraging loyalty to a person over loyalty to the law. Political scientists call this democratic backsliding, and in recent years, respected global democratic monitors have raised concern about the United States itself. For example, Civicus, an international civil liberties watchdog that tracks freedom worldwide, recently reported that the United States has experienced a rapid decline in civic freedom, warning of authoritarian shift in governance. This is the same organization that monitors countries like Hungary, Turkey, India for democratic erosion. When they flag the US, it's not casual commentary, it's institutional data. The rise of strongman narrative. Donald Trump's political rise introduced something new to American presidential rhetoric. Not we the people, but I alone can fix it.
Nobody knows the system better than me. I alone can fix it.
I understand things. I comprehend very well. Okay? Better than, I think, almost anybody.
Nobody knows more about construction than I do.
I think I know more about the environment than most people. I know more about wind than you do.
That phrase matters because in functioning democracies, power flows through institutions, not personalities. During Trump's presidency, we saw repeated attacks on judges who ruled against him, intelligence agencies, career civil servants, election officials, even members of his own parties who refused personal loyalty. This pattern, delegitimizing institutions while elevating personal authority, is one of the earliest markers of authoritarian politics in political science literature. It wasn't just rhetoric, it translated into a real institutional stress, attack on the press, and the collapse of shared truth. A democracy cannot survive without a shared factual reality, and here where documented evidence matters. Reporters Without Borders, one of the world's leading press freedom organizations, publicly condemned Trump-era policies towards media, calling them authoritarian-style attacks on press independence. Additionally, Reuters reported that Trump-era effort to cut or restructure US public international news outlets like Voice of America were criticized by press freedom groups as weakening independent journalism and opening space for state-aligned propaganda globally. This is not opinion, this is a documented institutional concern that press independence, a core democratic pillar, was under political pressure. At the same time, the phrase fake news become a blatant label to discredit any unfavorable reporting. Once people stop trusting independent media, they become vulnerable to political myth-making. That's how the truth becomes optional and power fills the vacuum. Election January 6th and democratic stress. In 2020, US faced a crucial democratic test, a peaceful transfer of power after a democratic loss in election. Instead, we witnessed something unprecedented in modern-day American history. A sitting president refusing to concede, pressure on state officials to overturn result, promotion of mass election fraud conspiracy theories, a mobilized crowd storming the Capitol. Scholars at democraticerosion.org, a research initiative studying global democratic breakdowns, analyzed that January 6th as a textbook example of democratic norm collapse driven by delegitimization of elections. Democracies don't die when tanks roll in, they die when losing election becomes unacceptable. That line was crossed. Ethno-nationalism, defining who belongs. Another well-documented warning signs in historical fascist movement is ethno-nationalism, the belief that a nation belongs primarily to one culture or ethnic identity. In recent years, political rhetoric increasingly framed immigrants as existential threat, refugees as invasion, religious minorities as security risk, and political opponents as un-Americans. This strategy is ancient: create fear of others to unify the loyal followers. Once citizenship becomes conditional on identity, democracy weakens because equal rights stop being equal. Religious nationalism and moral absolutism. The US has always had a religion in its public life, but recently political movements have emerged arguing that the state should enforce one religion moral code. The nation is divinely chosen. Political opposition is not just wrong, they are evil. When political authority merges with religious absolutism, compromise disappears and democracy cannot function without compromise. This is why political scientists consider religious nationalism a high risk factor in democratic erosion globally. Weakening of check and balances. Perhaps the most serious evidence comes from Amnesty International. In recent report, Amnesty warned that the United States has seen erosion of human rights, protection and legal safeguards, citing attack on freedom of expression, protest rights and independence of legal institutions. When independent courts, civil services and legal oversight are portrayed as enemies rather than safeguards, the foundation of constitutional democracy weakens. Authoritarian systems don't always abolish institutions, they capture them. So here is the real point. This isn't about whether you like Trump, this isn't about left or right, it's about whether institutions stay stronger than personalities, whether truth stays stronger than propaganda, whether losing election remains acceptable. History shows democracies don't vanish overnight. They erode when citizens stop paying attention. Fascism doesn't arrive announcing itself. It arrives wrapped in flags, promises, and grievances. The question isn't, could it happen here? The question is, are we noticing the warning signs in time? Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video.